Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Truly an honor, a pleasure to be with everyone. Assalamu alaikum, kids.
Walaikum
Assalamu
salam.
alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
Walaikum assalam.
Okay, they are also very excited to meet you and really appreciate the time that you have given us generously.
No, no worries at all. It's a pleasure.
I just wanna, I did tell them just now about you, so that's what we were just talking about.
Okay,
But
okay,
let
cool.
me introduce you again.
Okay.
So Sister Anita is from Mental Illness Awareness and Support Association.
Yep.
And so this is a organization that helps people with mental health issues, and she is the president of this organization, and she has, as we said, very generously agreed to give some of our time today to you guys, because this is what you decided that you want to fix or to want to help with mental health problems in the world today. And there are many ways we can help. We haven't decided exactly which area we want to go in, but this is interviews just to help us get a better understanding of these. Some of us are very new to even this term mental health. Some of us know a lot more about it, and we are all, as I think I mentioned in my email, from many different countries here, from UK, from Middle East, from Australia, Malaysia, so on. So okay, let's begin.
Happy to be here.
Is there anything you would like to say to begin with?
Mashallah. Thank you so much for having me, kids. And of course, to Sister Ariba, thank you so much, Sister, for having me today. It's such an honor to be here, and it's such a great program you guys are doing. And I feel that, talking about or discussing about mental health in today's class or discussion would be very beneficial, because as we know, the onset of the condition happens at this age. Your kids that are in the class. So I think it's a very important discussion to have. So really, whatever questions you have, I'm very, very glad to be able to share it with you today, inshallah. I'll do my very best to make it as layman as possible, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. Okay, so let's begin. So they're just going to raise their hands and we'll call out their names. And I just want to, I said 30 minutes to you. I think we might go a little bit over. Is that a problem with you?
No, I'm fine. I'm okay.
Jazakallah khair.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Ali.
Okay, to start off, what is mental health?
Okay. I heard from your teacher. So Sister Ariba, do they refer you as a teacher, principal?
They refer me with all kinds of things.
All kinds of things.
Say teacher. That's fine.
Okay.
They
all
call
right.
me Auntie Ariba, Teacher Ariba, Ustada, all kinds of things, Miss Ariba.
Okay, so as much as possible, when I do discussion with kids, I like to have it as interactive as possible. And what I understood from your teacher Ariba is that all of you have been doing a little bit of research on mental health. And one of the misconceptions that happens a lot is people think mental health and mental illness are the same thing. So let me ask you, Ali, from a little bit of research that you've done, what is your view on this?
Like basically, mental health, like it's basically like you know how you get hurt, like you hurt your leg or something. It's basically like that. It's like just as like bad as that. It's basically in the brain. It's like it really makes people sad. It's like really bad, like depression. Maybe people start self-harming. And it's really like a lot of depression where they just feel sad sometimes.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so what Ali just explained is actually what is mental illness or what is a mental health condition. But mental health, kids, it is exactly like physical health. We all have it, but we don't focus on it. A lot of times when we talk about health, what do we focus on? It's always physical health. How do we keep ourselves physically healthy? But we don't talk about how do we keep ourselves mentally healthy. And this is the area that we really want to discuss on today. So mental health is, for example, the things that you do on a daily basis. You're able to, for example, be in the classroom today. You know, you're able to contribute, you're able to interact with your friends, with your teacher, with your family. That is mental health. But mental illness or a mental health disorder is when something happens to you and your daily routine is disrupted. And so rightfully, like how Ali you mentioned, is when, you know, you feel depressed maybe. But we use the term depressed kind of loosely. So it's more of feeling, for example, sad, or you feel irritable, or you don't feel like going to school. You know, previously where you were happy or cheerful kid, and then suddenly, you feel angry. You feel that you're not worth it, for example, or your parents don't love you anymore. And it can also manifest into physical symptoms. So you feel like you have a headache, frequently, or you have an upset stomach frequently, or you have, low grade fever, for example. So mental health issues can also manifest into physical symptoms as well. So this is the difference between, mental health and mental illness, or mental health disorder, or mental health issues.
So basically, everyone has mental health then, but like some people have bad, some people have good.
Exactly. So we all have mental health. Some people have mental health issues, and some people have mental health disorders.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Next question. Yeah, Hanan?
Like, what type of things cause mental health issues?
Okay, there's a lot of things that can cause mental health issues. So what we typically say, in order for someone to have or to be inflicted with a mental health condition or issue, it must be multifactorial, right? And the most common misconception is typically you think that you can inherit a mental health condition. But actually, you can't inherit the condition, but you can inherit we call it the susceptibility to it. So for example, if your mom has it, there is a big chance that you can inherit the susceptibility of having the condition, but having that alone isn't enough. You have to have other conditions. So for example, what are those? For kids your age, it could possibly be bullying in school, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, going through trauma in life. In this current pandemic that we're in, it could possibly be, for the adults, loss of income. You lose a loved one, for example. So these can all trigger it. And of course, chemical imbalances in the brain, that's also the other thing. So for some people with chemical imbalances in the brain, they could fall into depression, for example, because they don't have enough of the good hormones. Like for example, when you do something that you like, that you love, playing football, going cycling, being with your friends, these things produce good hormones. And some people don't have enough of these hormones in the brain. So this could also trigger a mental health condition, but that also is not enough. So you have the genetics, you have the chemical imbalances or the other triggers, like I mentioned, loss of a loved one, having traumas in life, but also another factor where you have these issues, but it's not being treated. So you get your treatment and help late. So this could also worsen the condition. So having all these together, then only can a mental health condition happen. So in reality, it's not really easy, Hanan, to get a mental health condition. And typically why people get it is because when you have all these symptoms, you don't get treatment early. So the earlier you get treatment, it can also be prevented. So from a mental health issue, before it becomes a mental health disorder, you must get yourself treated. So for example, if, because of the pandemic, you feel that you have a lot of worry, you have all these probably negative thoughts, or, you feel scared, there's a lot of fear, if you have all these emotions, please talk to your family, your mom or your dad, an adult, someone that you can trust. It's very important for all of us, especially being kids, to talk to someone about it. Don't keep it to yourself, because when you keep it to yourself, it actually gets worse. It doesn't get better. And I understand that for some kids, it's difficult for you to talk about it because you don't know it's a problem. you don't know that what you're going through isn't healthy or normal. And so that is why having discussions like today is very important. And I can tell you that I'm a person with the condition. So I'm a person with lived experience. And I started having these emotions as young as 7 years old. And because I didn't understand what I was going through, I couldn't get the help that I needed until it was too late, right? So it's very important, Hanan. I hope that gives you a little bit of idea.
Jazakallah khairan. Can I just ask
You're
like a little
welcome.
question about the first question? So you know
Yeah.
you said disorders and like mental illness. Is like a disorder like a more severe, or is it like what's the difference between a disorder and like a, I think you said, I don't know if I didn't hear correctly, but you said mental health disorders and mental health illnesses. Is like what's the difference?
Yeah, it's the same. Mental health disorder and mental illness and mental health condition are all the same. What is different is between a mental health issue and a mental illness. That's
Okay.
different. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Hannah. You're welcome.
Maya, you have a question?
Yeah. How long does it usually take for mental health to recover from treatment?
For a person to recover. Wow, what a big question for a little person. How old are you, Maya?
10.
Where are you from?
Indonesia.
Indonesia, apa kabar? Can you speak Indonesian?
No,
No?
not really.
Oh, not really? Wow. Okay. Yeah, I was kind of proud of myself for a bit. Okay. Sorry. So, okay.
Do you understand it, Maya?
Yeah, I can understand it, but I can't really speak it.
I see.
Ah, okay.
Okay.
All right. It happens a lot in kids today, Sister Ariba.
Okay.
English becomes the first language. Anyway, thank you very much, Maya. That's a very good question. Yeah, okay. So how long does it take for recovery to happen when a person is inflicted with a condition? And the answer is, it really depends. And it depends on a lot of things. When you have the condition, how fast treatment comes in, right? Do you have enough support? That's very important, because you can get all the treatment you need, you can get all the help that is required, but if you don't have a good support system, recovery becomes very difficult. So what is a good support system? That means you have support from your family, which is a very, very important support system, really. And it has to be positive, right? Support from your friends in school, teachers in school, other relatives. These are all important people to be part of the support system. And then you have the extended support system. This could be a mental health professional. That means a doctor that is working with you with your treatment, right? A counselor that also works with you in the treatment process, or a spiritual healer like your teacher, for example, right? So these are important people that must be part of the support system. So that is actually the most crucial part of it. So having said all that, how long does it take? It really depends on how much you've learned in that recovery process. That means having good coping mechanisms. So what are those? Knowing what to do when something happens. That means when you have a mental health condition, you will have episodes, we say. So for example, I'm a person with a disorder which is called anxiety disorder, specifically panic disorder. So hopefully some of you have done a little bit of research on that. So a person that has a panic disorder, for example, what happens to me is, before, when I didn't know how to manage my condition, is I couldn't speak to another person. If I do that, I will be panicked. It will trigger my panic. I will be so afraid that I wouldn't be able to continue having that conversation with another person, or I wouldn't be able to, have this discussion with you guys, because I would, suddenly feel I'll be out of breath, I can't breathe, you know, I'll be having palpitations, you know, I will actually feel that, you know, I'm suffocated, I'm not able to breathe, for example. So these are, we call it as episodes. So previously, when I didn't have good coping mechanisms, I wasn't able to overcome these things when it, you know, when it came. So these are some of the things and coping mechanisms that I had to learn in order for me to be able to function again as a normal human being. So how long did it took me? It took me about 6 months to be able to talk to another person without feeling afraid, right? It took me about 1.5 years to be able to speak in front of people again. It took me 1 year plus as well to be able to drive again. But again, it really depends. Everyone is different. It takes, you know, longer for some people. It takes shorter for some people. So it depends on that support system, that treatment, the coping mechanisms, and how much knowledge you have on your condition. So knowledge changes everything. And I always call knowledge, you know, it's transformative. So if you seek that knowledge about your own condition, then you will be able to recover faster and easier than another person. So for example, like you guys today, you have, you know, a little bit of information, and hopefully after we end today's discussion, you will have, you know, some good takeaways. So with this knowledge that you have, if, for example, in future, if you have that symptom or somebody else has it, your friend or your cousin or someone in your family, you will be able to know and you will be able to help the person. So that's why this knowledge is very important, inshallah. Hope that answers your question, Maya.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Omar?
I would like to know, why do you think people say mental illnesses or diseases makes you crazy?
Okay, yeah. This is one of the things, that's a very good question, Omar. And which one are you? Can you wave a little bit to me? Oh, okay. Because it says Lorsi on your
Omar
name.
Morsi.
Oh, Morsi. Oh, okay, because I have that page icon. It's hidden. Omar, yes, thank you very much, Omar. That's a very, very good question. Thank you so much for asking that question. Okay, so typically when we talk about mental illness or a mental health condition, the first thing that crosses our mind automatically is a person that has the condition is crazy. Am I right? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. We can discuss, it's fine. Okay, yes. And the reason for this is because of how first the media portrays it, right? A lot of times when we read the news or we read something on social media or we watch movies or, you know, whatever series or something that you really like on TV, on television, they will portray a person that has a mental health condition being somebody that's not really quite there, or the person's violent, or the person's dangerous, or the person is not able to be productive or have these evil thoughts. So typically when we watch these kind of, you know, movies and things on television or when we read the news, we believe it, right? We don't go to the computer and do some research on it, right? So this is how that negative perception breeds in society. Okay, that's one. Two is because we don't have that knowledge on mental health condition or mental illness, but we take it in as the truth, right? We don't have any platforms, for example, like, you know, you guys today, you have this platform where you can ask me that. But imagine the people before you, where would they be getting all this information? And let me tell you, at this age, being able to have the opportunity to speak to a person with the condition, mashallah, that's a privilege. Not a lot of people get that chance. And by you talking to me today, it will change that perception that you have, because do I look like a crazy person to you, Omar?
No.
No, not yet, because I haven't done my thing. No, just kidding. But yeah, so one of the things to change that perception is having conversations like this, is talking to a person that has gone through it. So when you've spoken to me today, now you know, oh, wait a minute, you know, a person with a mental health condition isn't crazy. We're actually listening from a person that has this condition. We're trying to learn something from this person. So this in itself will help to reduce, we say, the stigma or the negative perception of society. So thank you so much, Omar, for asking this question, and I really hope it helps, inshallah.
Thank you. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you so much. You're welcome.
Hadi?
Miss Ariba,
Yes?
I have a question.
Okay, just hold on, Hadi, and then you can ask your question. Just raise your hand if you have a question. Also, I want to say, you guys, you know, I see a lot of you are raising your hands now, but you're going to start forgetting your questions by the time your turn comes. So make sure you write your question down so it doesn't fly away from your brain. Okay, Hadi.
Okay. How should you really deal with mental health disorders and mental illness?
Okay, thank you very much, Hadi. That's a very good question. Okay, the most important thing, Hadi, is first thing is take care of your sleep. Let me ask you, what time do you sleep every day?
7 to, I sleep at 7.
Wow.
I wake up at 9. But
You
on
sleep?
days, I wake up at 8.
You sleep at 7 p.m.?
Yeah.
Wow, okay, so wrong person to ask this question. Okay, so sleeping is the most important thing, Hadi. So we have to get enough sleep. You know why? Because when we sleep, it repairs our body. Our body starts repairing itself at 11 o'clock at night. So what you need to do is try to sleep before 11. And we need to bank in about 6 to 8 hours every day on average. So if you sleep at, let's say, 10 o'clock, you know, you can get up at about 5 or 6 in the morning, right? So that's a very good, you know, time. And that's enough sleep and enough rest. So when you have enough sleep, when you have enough rest, your body can repair itself. You feel healthier. You're able to focus the next morning. Have you ever slept late or slept maybe 2 to 3 hours at night? How do you feel? You don't feel really good, right? You become groggy, you know, you have, right? You're in a bad mood, you know, you become irritable. So that's also the other thing. So having enough sleep. The next thing is you have to eat on time, and you have to eat nutritious food, right? Not the junk, right? We want to eat vegetables, we want to eat fruits, we want to eat grain. You know, these are all really, you know, the best diet in the entire world is the Mediterranean diet, because there's a lot of colorful vegetables. And a lot of kids don't like this. But as you grow older, you will realize that you really need to, right? So that's 2. The third thing is exercising. You have to exercise every single day, right? For kids, typically this is not a problem, because even when your parents, you know, get angry when you go exercising every day, running outside, so that's not a problem for kids. But when you grow older, you know, always remember that you have to bank in at least 20 minutes every single day to exercise. You can do running, you know, you can jog, you can walk, you can go cycling, play football, basketball, whatever, you know, that you like. Fourth thing is you have to talk to someone. You have to have good friends. You have to have, you know, for example, siblings that you can talk to about anything. This is very important. This is what we call social connection, right? So talking to someone else is very, very important, so that you have a place, a safe space for you to share anything. The other thing is, it's called self-care. You have to take care of yourself. Invest in, you know, hobbies. What are the things that you like to do? So for example, for you, Hadi, let's say you like to play football. What do you like to do? What are some of the hobbies you could share? You like to play?
I like to play tennis and ride my bike.
Okay, So this is something that you can, do, every day, or when you feel, stressed out, or you feel pressured about something, what you can try to do is go ride something, you know, don't try and, sometimes kids, because we're not able to deal with our emotions quite well yet, that when something happens, we tend to get angry easily, for example, and then we want to scream and shout and argue. But try to pause when this happens and go grab your bike and go cycling, for example, right? So this is one of the ways that can help you to manage these emotions that you have, that you don't know what to do with it. Or when something happens, try to talk to someone. Try to talk to a good friend, try to talk to your mom or your dad or your sibling. This also helps. So these are basically some of the things that can help you manage all these, mental health issues if you have it, if you're struggling with it. These are really basic things. We all know this, really, even the adults, but we don't put it into practice. So this becomes a problem when we grow up, right? And also because of a lot of things, when we start having families, when we have work, so we don't have a work-life balance, we say. So now that you guys know this, it's very important for you to practice this in your daily life starting from today. Okay? So rest, sleep well, eat on time, exercise, do things that you like, have someone that you trust to talk to if you have problems. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much, Adi. Thank you. You're welcome.
Aisha?
Auntie Anita, how did you experience helping people with mental illness?
Hi, Aisha. Assalamualaikum. How did I, sorry, I was so too excited. How did I help?
How did you experience to help people with the mental illness?
Oh, okay. Okay, how did I actually began helping people with mental illness when I crossed over to recovery. So what does that mean? That means when I was able to manage my condition, I, had a discussion with my husband one day, and, he was the one that proposed to me the idea of sharing my story with other people. And if you know, Aisha, a lot of people with the condition feel very embarrassed to talk about it. They're afraid, they're scared because they're afraid that when they talk about it or they tell another person, that the person will judge them, right? So like one of your friends was saying earlier, so if I were to tell someone that I had, a mental health condition or a mental illness, someone will look at me, weird and think, oh, this person's crazy, or this person's violent, or she's just going to flip out the next minute, right? So this is why it becomes very difficult for a person with a condition to share their story. But because my intention of sharing it, Aisha, in the beginning was, I hoped that my story would help the other person to get the help that they needed. So I always say this: you never know whose story will provide the key to unlock your struggles, right? So I hoped that by sharing my story and what I went through would help the other person to share their story and get the help that they needed. And true enough, Aisha, alhamdulillah, I'm very thankful that from sharing my story to one person, today I've actually shared this story to thousands of people, across the globe, because I've traveled the whole world. And many people always tell me that not only has my story helped them, but my story has helped them in saving their lives. Because kids, I don't really like to talk about this part of this condition, but sometimes when the pain gets really, really bad and you don't get the treatment, or you don't have enough support, one of the symptoms of this condition is you will feel like you don't want to live anymore, na'uzubillah. So by sharing my story, it has saved a lot of people, and you guys can do the same. And how do you save another person's life? Is just by listening. You don't even have to say anything. What a person needs is just support, Aisha. So if you're going through, a struggle in your life right now, for example, and you were to talk to your mom about it, right? You will feel that burden that you're carrying, on your shoulders, it'll be lighter once you share it across. So this is what you guys can do, even as children. Because let me tell you, my children, they were my strength. Because of them, they're one of the reasons that I have been able to get back on my feet. So don't think that just because you're kids, you're not going to make a difference. Because let me tell you, you can make a difference, and a big one too, inshallah.
Okay, Mustafa.
MashaAllah, Jazakallah khair, Auntie Anita.
Thank you very much, Aisha. You're most welcome.
How do people get a mental health disorder?
Sorry, say that again. Oh, down there. Okay, Mustafa, mashallah, alhamdulillah.
How do people, how do people get a mental health disorder?
Okay, I explained that earlier from the different, it has to be multifactorial. So again, it's through genetics, but again, you can't inherit the condition, but you can inherit the susceptibility to it, right? But that's not enough. You also have to have other triggers. So for example, loss of a loved ones, being, emotionally abused, be it bullying, sexual abuse, chemical imbalances in the brain. That's also one of the other triggers, but that is also not enough for you to get a mental health condition. You will have to go through, for example, risk factors, not having enough knowledge, or going through consistent stress in life. So for example, people in lower income countries, they're more prone to mental health condition because their stress levels are more consistent in that sense. So that's also a risk factor, right? And substance abuse, that's also a big trigger factor. So if you misuse alcohol or drugs, that's also a big thing. And if you get treatment late, as mentioned earlier, so if you have already some of the mental health issues and you don't get treatment early, that in combination with everything else can trigger a mental health condition. So really, Mustafa, to get a mental health condition isn't easy, but because of the lack of knowledge that we have, makes it seems easier to get the condition, but really it isn't. So I hope I've answered your question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
You're
Muhammad.
welcome.
Why did you choose to do help mental health people with mental health?
Yeah,
why did
I
you
do.
want to?
Why did I
choose to help the people with mental health issues?
Okay. Yeah. Just to add on what I explained earlier, the reason why I started helping was because I wanted to, if possible, another person not to have to go through what I went through. That was my hope, and I wanted to always provide a message of hope to others, for those that are struggling out there, that recovery is possible, that treatment is available, that suicide is preventable. So these are the messages that I typically want other people out there that are struggling with mental health condition to know. Because let me tell you, Muhammad, when I was struggling with the condition, I never knew that recovery was possible, because I didn't know of anyone who had the condition during the time. So I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I couldn't see a way out to my struggles. Only when I was going through that recovery process, then only I started to meet other people that were struggling as well. And let me tell you, when I met these other people, this was when I felt, oh my God, there's actually somebody else having this condition as well. I thought I was the only one in the entire world that had the condition. I never knew. I didn't have the knowledge. The only thing that I knew about mental health condition, I don't know if you guys have watched it, is a movie called A Beautiful Mind. It's an old movie. But that was the only thing I knew. And the only condition that I knew was schizophrenia. And even then, I didn't really understand what schizophrenia meant. So that was the only two things that I knew about, mental illness. And let me tell you, that didn't help. So when I, realized this was when I really wanted to, start helping the other person. And that is why in MIASA, in this organization that I, created, we call it peer support. So peers helping other peers. Because, I can give you a really good example. So for example, if someone has cancer, you go for treatment, you go and see the doctor, you know what needs to be done. But really, in actual fact, what you need to do is you need to go and speak to the cancer survivors. You need to know what made them able to survive until today and, and continue being, this productive individual. What is that one thing that the doctor is not able to tell you? So this is what we need to learn. So similar, putting that context into a person with a mental health condition, it's the same. A person with lived experience helping another person with a mental health condition, because we've gone through it, we've gone through the recovery, we've gone through the rock bottoms. We can tell you what needs to be done in order for you to go through that recovery process better, inshallah.
Okay, Sanar?
What are the stages of mental health issues?
Okay. So the first thing that will happen is there will be, we call it stressors, or you will be in a very stressful situation. So have you been in a stressful situation?
No.
No?
Never?
Okay. No? Wow.
During exams? During exams?
Nope.
You don't get stressed?
Wow. Sister Reba, you have extraordinary kids here. No stress, nothing. Okay, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
Go to bed early.
Go to bed early. I know, 7 o'clock, mashallah, alhamdulillah. Okay, so Salah, so I don't know if you're going to be able to relate with what I'm going to share here, but it has to start with you being in a stressful situation, right? Do you have siblings, may I ask?
Yes.
Okay, do you maybe fight with your siblings?
Yes.
Yes. Do you find yourself sometimes being stressed out or tense in that situation when you're arguing?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, good in the sense that you're going to be able to relate with what I'm about to tell you. Okay, so imagine being in that situation, right? And then suddenly you feel angry, or you find yourself feeling, whatever decision that your parents made to break up that argument wasn't fair, for example, right? So being in that stressful situation, being in that situation of crisis, we say, suddenly you find yourself having all these thoughts. If you don't, for example, speak to another person or do something else, like I mentioned earlier, go cycling or doing something that you like, right? Or watch TV, that's a very simple thing. Watch a funny, or comedy, for example. What will happen is these thoughts won't go away, right? So you will be still thinking about it and thinking about it. So imagine something else happens. So let's say you failed in your exam, Nauzubillah, right? So that adds on to this stressful situation that you're in, and all these thoughts that's not really good, it adds on to all that. So it becomes worse. So imagine putting stones in a bag, right? So what happens when every single day you put more stones in it? Eventually what happens?
It becomes heavier.
It becomes heavier, and eventually one day it will burst, right?
Yeah.
So when it bursts, this is when the mental illness or the mental health condition happens. So what you need to do is you need to unload these rocks and stones that you have in these bags, right? So this is where the support comes in. This is where the treatment comes in. This is when talking to other people helps. This is when taking care of your sleep, eating, self-care, doing things that you like. All these things, if you do it, your bag that you carry, it will always be there, but it won't be heavy, right? So this is what you need to do. So these are really the stages and steps. So it starts with being in a stressful situation and then feeling that burden, having the anxiety, the sadness, the anger, and everything. And if you don't have these good coping mechanisms and if you don't take care of yourself, the bag will explode and then you will have a mental health condition.
Okay.
So I hope that helps.
That was a really great example, mashallah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Muhammad Wasim.
Muhammad Wasim.
Assalamu alaikum. I wanted to ask a question.
Sure.
Are psychotic disorders age-related?
Are psychotic disorders, what again? Related?
Age-related.
Age-related. Okay. It really depends, but a lot of times people that have those disorders, it starts from young and you go through a very big event that is bad. So what can that be? That could possibly be loss of a loved one at a very young age. It could be not being in a very supportive environment. It could be misusing drugs and alcohol at a very young age. So this is how a psychotic, disorder begins. Similarly to any disorders, it does begin from young, for many, but it doesn't mean that you can't prevent it from happening, right? Like I mentioned earlier, if you get your treatment early, you don't even have to, for example, eat medication or go for therapy and all that, right? If you get the help early, that means you are able to talk to someone, you have a good support system, you take care of yourself, you go exercising, you go for spiritual classes, you read the Quran, you do your salah, you eat well, you sleep well. If you do all that from a very early age, then inshallah, it will be okay. So one of the things that I like to talk about is building resilience, right? So how do we build resilience? Resiliency is, I always say that it's like a muscle, right? You have to keep on building it, because how do you recover from going through or facing difficulties without, lasting effects, right? Because I see that a lot of kids today are not very resilient, because this is also our fault as adults. For example, like me, I'm a very protective parent, and sometimes that's not very good. Why isn't it good? Because I'll give you an example. So my son wants to learn how to cycle. So before he starts cycling, before he goes for his classes, I tell him, wear your pads, wear your headgear, wear everything, make sure you're all protected. So how is he going to be resilient? Versus my husband, when he teaches them to cycle, he says, don't wear anything. If you fall, get back up on your feet. Even if you have scratches, get back up on your feet. So that's how you become resilient, right? Just throw you in the swimming pool. It's either you drown or you learn how to swim. So this is what parents don't do today. And I'm also at fault sometimes. So I'm trying. So, try as much as possible to build that resilience. That means don't give up. Whatever that you go through in this life, if you fail in your exams or you don't do well, if something happens, always know and understand that there is a great hikmah behind it. Allah puts us in situations because He wants us to learn from it, right? He wants to elevate our status. He wants us to, learn or take lessons from what we go through in life. And one of the most important things is to always have a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because with every challenge, there must be something greater that He wants us, and we'll definitely be rewarded for it, inshallah. So I really hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, what I meant was, I understand what you said. I meant if, for example, you've got mental health, it takes time to cure. You've took medication. It takes time to cure. And you've just recently got psychotic disorders.
Right.
Because you're a certain age. If you're for example, 16. At 16, you have to have psychotic disorders. Like at a certain age, you have to have psychotic disorders.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I wanted to ask.
So is it like at 16 you are going to definitely get a psychotic disorder even though
of
you're
course
getting
not.
treatment?
Oh no, of course not.
Like
Of course not.
certain
That's
age, like it could
no.
be anything.
No. There's not a certain age, but from research, okay, from the studies that has been going around, I can give you an example. The ages of 16 to 19 years old, you are more prone, just because right now that study has been done. So from the studies, from the data that has been collected, they have found out that, you know, people, especially from the ages of 16 to 24 years old, many have the disorder from this age group. But it doesn't mean that if you are 16, you're going to get the condition. Of course not. It has to be multifactorial, like I said. So what we need to understand, Muhammad, is anyone can get the condition if you have enough of the factors. But you can prevent it from all the things that I just said by taking care of yourself, by having the knowledge. So if something happens, if you're in a stressful situation, you know what to do. This is very important, right? We don't really talk about it. If you're going through, you know, something big in school, for example, if you're being bullied in school, don't keep it to yourself. You have to tell someone. This is very important, okay? Because from a lot of research, from a lot of data, we have found out that why kids get a mental health condition, a lot of it is because they were bullied in school from a very young age, and they don't get the help that they need. They did not tell an adult. Okay, so the bullying continues, it persists, right? So if anyone is going through that situation, please get help. Please talk to someone. Okay.
I think you have touched on this, but I just want to ask, like, why don't kids get help?
Because they don't necessarily know, Sister Ariba, what they're going through is not normal. Because, you know, you have, you know, when we talk about emotions, there's, I think, more than 300 emotions that we go through, that we experience. But let me ask you, so if someone comes up to you and says, Sister Ariba, how are you? You know, we typically limit how are you by answering, I'm fine, alhamdulillah, you know, when there's so many ways of expressing ourselves, but we don't talk about it. So kids, being kids, they don't necessarily know how to articulate, you know, these emotions that are not healthy. They don't know how to share it across, especially if they come from families or they're brought up, especially boys, in families where, you know, don't cry, you know, suck it up, you know, in that kind of environment. So they learn how to bottle up these emotions. So that's the problem. And this is what we've seen throughout human history, really. So I think what good has happened throughout this pandemic of COVID-19 is we are able to now understand the importance of mental health, and we're able to have this discussion in a large scale, alhamdulillah. So this is why we're having, you know, this discussion today. I'm sure this discussion is also triggered by the whole pandemic of COVID-19, because it has impacted the mental health of many. Right, Sister Riba? So yeah, to answer your question, really sadly, that is why.
Yeah. And maybe you guys can relate to it, that sometimes you want to say something to your parents, but you just don't know how to tell them what you are feeling. And also we talked a little bit about this last week, but not too much, is that this how are you thing that you just said, that neither am I able to express it, and often the other person is not really interested in more than I'm good.
Yes.
So not really listening to are you really good? And we don't always, I mean, amongst our friends, our siblings, are we really seeing, and how much difference do you think that can make? You talked about this, but I just want to stress that point, that how big a difference listening.
Yes, it makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference, because if you are able to be vulnerable, it allows or gives permission for the other person to be vulnerable, right? So that helps. That in itself opens doors, and brings that conversation to a new level entirely. Because if you don't open up to another person, that person can't open up to you as well. But like you said, it's absolutely true. You know, kids, if you know the movie Inside Out, have you guys watched Inside Out? If you watch that movie, you'll see that, you know, you have those emotions, but only 5 emotions, because that's the most basic emotion that we have, right? We go through sadness, joy, anger, you know, and all that. But really, when we talk about anger, even the word anger itself, there's actually a lot of ways to express it. So I really encourage you, when you think about even the word anger, to learn how to further that conversation. Like, I'm angry, you know, why are you angry? You know, I feel, you know, that I was not treated justly. Why do you feel that you weren't treated justly? Because, you know, I feel that, you know, a lot of times you favor my sister over me, for example. But why do you think I favor more? Oh, because when you speak to her, you smile, but when you speak to me, you don't smile. You know, so you have to further that conversation. So there's a lot of things that can happen when you open up and when you talk about it. So try to take that baby step. Eventually, you know, normalizing these kind of conversations will really help in you breaking that barrier of bottling up your emotions, inshallah.
Mariam hasn't asked a question. We have run. We have already ran over.
No worries.
Are you okay?
Very happy to answer. Yeah, I'm fine. Yes.
Okay, Mariam.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Hi, Mariam.
So from my research, I learned that like 30 years ago, the cases are much lower. So like, why do you think they've increased?
Why do you think we've increased in what again, Mariam? Sorry.
In like the cases of mental illness, like they've increased because 30 years ago they were lower.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if that's necessarily true, Mariam. And the reason why I say this is because I feel that the awareness on mental health has really happened in such a big scale that probably I feel that more people have opened up about it. So that means when you open about it and talk about it and you seek treatment, you become part of the data. So maybe that is why it seems like there are more people with the condition, but maybe not so. I think it's quite the same, you know, from 30 years ago and today. It's just that people are braver today because more awareness has happened, especially recently. Because really, if you look throughout human history, before this current pandemic with COVID-19, we had a huge pandemic in 1918, which was the Spanish flu. And during the Spanish flu, a lot of people were afflicted with mental health condition and really ended their lives, okay, because of the whole, you know, fear and uncertainties and all that. And then we had a lot of other viruses that came, so a lot of other epidemics. And I think the most recent one was the SARS epidemic, and also the MERS-CoV one, right, the Middle East virus. And during that epidemic as well, a lot of people were afflicted with mental health condition as well. So now with pandemic, with COVID-19, you will see a lot more people will be afflicted, especially the frontliners, you know, the doctors, the nurses, the people that are currently taking care of people with COVID-19. Because there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of anxiety, you know, they work long hours, they're not able to rest well, you know, they're not able to see their families, for example, fear of infecting their families and all that. So not necessarily there are more people that have mental illness today, but more people are talking about it. And also because of such pandemics, that we can now see this, and it can be part of data. So that's probably why as well.
Jazakallah khair.
Ms. Ariba?
You're welcome.
Yes, Imran.
Can I go to the toilet?
Yeah, that's okay. You can go to the toilet. Yeah, Hanan?
So cute.
So I think someone asked a question, but this is like kind of like a follow-up question. So
sure.
Like, I think you were talking like how like when people get stressed, they think about different stuff. So like, do negative thoughts like play a role in getting like mental health issues?
Yeah, Hanan, unfortunately it does. It does if you don't know how to break yourself away from the negative thoughts that you're experiencing, right? Because sometimes when people get these negative thoughts, it keeps, ruminating in your mind. You don't know how to get rid of it, and then it becomes a problem. So that's why when you have these negative thoughts, it's very important for you to rationalize with it. And how do you rationalize with it is through knowledge, right? So whatever it tries to tell you, you have to have a certain knowledge for you to combat these negative thoughts. And if you're not able to do that, then you have to talk to an adult. You have to talk to somebody that can help you, um, break these thoughts that you have, because negative thoughts are really, really bad, especially if you don't know how to manage and handle it. Because it can really be evil. It can really be evil thoughts, and it's not healthy to have them, especially when you have the thought where you're not worth living, or people don't love you, or you're not good enough, for example. These are really bad thoughts, but it can be helped if you talk to someone else. And the other thing about these thoughts are, it's absolutely not true, but sometimes because of the situation that you're in, and because you guys are kids, it's easy for you to believe these thoughts, you see. So that's why it's very important for you to talk to an adult, somebody that you trust, your mom or your dad or a sibling or an aunt, or your grandma or your grandpa, somebody like that, or your teacher, of course.
Jazakallah khairan for that. Could I ask one more question? Is that okay?
Sure, go ahead.
So what does Islam say about mental health?
Okay, I think Islam has said a lot about mental health, and even if we talk about our Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, he too went through mental health issues like anyone else. And imagine the affliction and the trials of the prophets and the Sahaba. They went through great trials and great challenges in life. Why would they not have a mental health issue? And I feel that the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inflicts prophets and Sahaba with either mental health issues or physical conditions is because he wants to show us that they're normal people. They go through anything and everything like anyone else. And I think this is so important for us to understand, and through that it will inspire us as well, and feel that Allah loves us as much. And I think this is very important for all of us to understand. But yeah, people before us have gone through physical pain and illnesses, and mental health issues as well.
Thank you a lot.
You're welcome.
Okay, Aisha?
I have one more question.
Okay.
I was doing my research last week, and I saw about Japan. Many people compare smart Japanese kids to other kids, but I heard that they have the highest suicide rates in the world, and they have a forest called the suicide forest. Is it true?
Yeah, sadly enough, Aisha, it always saddens me to talk about, suicide. But yeah, Japan has one of the highest rates of suicide in the world. And they have, a big psychiatric facility with a lot of beds as well. And I think one of the reasons for this is also the lack of faith, religion. And I think one of the bigger factors is because they have lost the meaning and purpose in life. Because if you look at the Japanese, or if you look at Japan, a lot of times people are very impressed with Japanese people. It's very clean, in terms of technology, they're really, way up there in comparison with other countries and all that. But, life isn't just about work and work and work. We're not robots. We're not meant to just live in this dunya, in this world, just to work. So there's no, so you lose that meaning and purpose in life. They no longer know, because let me tell you guys, without religion, without faith, what becomes of you? You know, what is life? Where do you find meaning? You know, where do you find purpose? I think it's very important for all of us to make ourselves useful, right? So in Japan, that's actually the reality of it. A lot of people have lost meaning and purpose in life, and you know, connection is very rare. And if you go to Japan, you'll see that, you know, people are very kind, they're very polite, but inside they're dead. That's the harsh reality and brutal truth of people in Japan. That is why suicide rates have rocketed, you know, through the years, which is very, very sad and very, very unfortunate. And so, you know, I have many good friends who are Japanese when I studied in the US. And, you know, they told me that they were raised in an environment where, you know, you have to excel in your studies, you have to excel in work. You know, they don't talk about religion. You know, that's not important, that's secondary. But then where do you go to when you have problems? You know, we have Allah. You know, Allah is closer to us in our jugular vein. So that's Islam. So I think religion plays a very, very important role because let me share with you, Aisha. You know, when a person goes through so much hardships in life, especially when, you know, having suicidal thoughts is a symptom of the condition, the only thing that can save you when you feel that way is it must be grounded in the faith and in, you know, in the religion, in grounded in that. So when you have religion, when you have that faith, you know, this is your anchor, and this anchor is so important for you not to lose hope. So I think, you know, without religion, it is so difficult for you to find that meaning and purpose in life. So I really hope that, you know, gives you some understanding about why it's currently happening in Japan.
Wow.
And that can also contribute like to people becoming so hopeless that because at any time you still have Allah to have hope with.
Yeah, to talk to. Yeah, that's why it's very
Hassan
important.
is dying to ask, so his hand is about to fall off, I think.
Okay, Hassan, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
I want to ask a question, which is like, what are the most common and least common illnesses
Mental health.
and disorders?
MashaAllah, Hassan, that's a very good question. Okay, the most common mental illness or mental health condition in kids are anxiety and depression. Okay, so anxiety, there's different kinds. And under the umbrella, okay, so you have anxiety disorder at the very top. And then you have a lot of other disorders under it. So it could be social anxiety disorder, it could be generalized anxiety disorder, it could be panic disorder, it could be obsessive compulsive disorder. So these are all the different kinds of disorder, right, under anxiety. So that's one of the most common one. The other common mental health condition is depression. So we hear about depression a lot. But depression is actually the parent. You know, under depression, there's a lot of other mental health condition or mental illnesses. So you have like the most common one is major depressive disorder. So major depressive disorder, let me explain a little bit. So this condition is when you feel, for example, sad and irritable, you know, nearly the entire day for a minimum of 2 weeks. You know, you eat a lot or you don't want to eat at all. You don't sleep or you sleep a lot, right? You're not able to focus. You don't feel happy anymore. You're not able to do the things that you found pleasurable before. So for example, you love to play football, now you no longer want to play football, right? And you feel a lot of guilt, excessive guilt. So for example, if you don't go to school, you feel like you're not worth it, right? So that's excessive guilt. You also feel like you don't want to live anymore. So these are all symptoms of the condition of depression. So these are the most common ones throughout the entire world. The least common ones is psychotic disorders. So for example, like schizophrenia, 1% of the entire world population have this disorder. So schizophrenia, only 1%, and depression and anxiety is the bigger chunk of it. Yeah.
Okay, Ahmed? And I think that'll be the last question, huh?
Okay,
Assalamu
yeah.
alaikum.
Yeah.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
My question is, how do you help other people with mental health?
Okay, the first thing that you need to do is don't judge, okay? And the reason why we can't judge is because, especially if we don't understand it and we've never gone through it and we don't have knowledge on it. So the best thing for you to do, Ahmed, is just to listen. Listen to your friend or your sibling or your cousin or whoever is pouring their heart to you. And when you listen, don't listen to judge again. Listen to understand. Listen for emotions. Don't listen to judge and don't listen to advice. This is a very, very important skill that we all must have. And the other thing is come from a place of, we say, empathy, right? Try to put yourself in that person's shoes. Try to feel what the person is feeling. Believe what the person is going through as the truth. Don't put your own experience into his. Okay, this is very important. So if you have all that, then you're going to be a great help to that person that is reaching out to you. Because let me tell you, if you talk to a lot of people that have survived the suicide attempts, for example, and if you ask them what helped them, what made them not give up, their answer would be somebody listened. That is all what it takes, just listening to another person, and it can save a life. Never forget that, kids. Okay, even for adults, can Sister Ariba, even for adults, all you want is just a lending ear, someone to just be there and listen to you, not to judge you, not to say, for example, when you say, my boss said this and this to me, and then you say things like, yeah, your boss is really nasty. Don't go say things like that. So when people try to vent out or rant or whatever, just try to be a good listener. This is very important.
Yeah. Instead of giving them solutions and do this. I remember like some time ago, my brother came to me and said to me, this is a really clear, I was surprised how clearly he conveyed that to me, is that every time I come to you and tell you my problem, you tell me it's not a big deal, it happens to everybody, and here's the solution.
Right. Or you say, oh, when your friend tells you something, you're like, but my situation is worse. I've gone through worse than you and I'm fine.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a big no, guys. You don't want to do that, kids. Okay. So for when a friend talks to you, listen to them and try to, be kind, especially be kind, and try to help them out. For example, say, why don't you come over to my house, or let's play, or let's do something together, or let's go eat, or let's grab some ice cream, for example. So all these things can really help, inshallah.
Just on that, because this has happened to some in the class, or may happen to them, is what if one of my friends is cutting themselves or tells me that I want to kill myself? What should I do, and how much is that a burden? Like, I don't make that like my responsibility to have to save them. And protect my own mental health in that time.
Right. I think it's very important for everyone to know that that is not your sole responsibility. That means it has to be a team of people, a collective effort. So if a person comes to you, your friend comes to you and tells this to you, you tell them this, can you tell me more? How can I help you? And then you go tell an adult. Okay, so this is very important. Don't carry that, especially when you're a kid, but try to encourage the person to talk to you, because maybe you're the only person that he or she is talking to. Okay, and when you've gotten this information, relay this information to an adult. Don't think that you're betraying their trust. Think about it as you're saving their life. Okay, so this is very important. So, but don't feel that you're responsible if, for example, the next day something happens to them. Don't feel that way. But what I'm trying to say is encourage the person to talk to you. Okay, because sometimes, Sister Reba, what we found out is when a child tells that to a friend, for example, their own classmate, that person is the only person that he or she opens up to. So it's very important because, friends, you feel that they're your peer. And that is why peer is so important. And, we're doing, a program soon, hopefully, where we're going to train, peers in school to help each other. I think this is so important because sometimes there's a gap, when you don't really want to talk to your parents, but you will open up to a friend. You will open up to your own classmate or peer. So that is why peers need to be equipped as well. And this is a very good question, really. So try to encourage your friend to talk to you, but with whatever information that you have, convey it to another person, an adult, your teacher, a counselor in school. Yeah.
So wouldn't I feel like I'm betraying their trust if I tell the
Yeah,
teacher?
right. That's how you will feel. But ultimately, what you need to understand is you're going to save that person's life. This is what we need to all understand, because being kids, sometimes when you self-harm, you go a little bit far and some people end up dying, Sister Ariba. And this is not a situation that we want to be in. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a very significant point, because these might seem small in the beginning, anxiety, depression, they started small, but the end point is somebody dying.
Yes,
and that's
because
what we're trying to avoid. That's how we're trying to save people.
Right, exactly. Because if people don't understand it, the extreme end of mental health condition is suicide. Nauzubillah. So this is what we need to understand. If we understand this, then we know how crucial it is for us to help if someone reaches out to us.
So lastly, I just want to ask you that you see these kids, what do you think is, or what would you say should be the highest priority for them? In what area should they help? Is it to, with the stigma with kids their age, or would you say helping others understand how to support, be good listeners, or something else? Would you say is should be their priority?
I think the priority should be fight stigma, definitely. And the reason why I say this is because if we are able to reduce the stigma, then kids are not going to feel afraid to talk about it. That means if someone were to self-harm, if there's no stigma, he or she would be able to go to her or his parent and say, Mom, look, I'm, self-harming. I have this psychological pain and, self-harming makes me feel better. If there's no stigma, they will feel brave to reach for the help because they know something's wrong. But because stigma is so prevalent in society, people that are going through really rough times and painful, really excruciating pain don't even reach out for the help. They would rather just, suffer alone and in silence. And this is typically how, one chooses to end their life, unfortunately. So we want to go ahead and fight that stigma. So normalizing the discussion, taking away the shame from talking about mental health, especially mental illness.
So giving people the courage to open up about it.
Definitely, especially boys. Girls are better because I guess we're more emotional beings. But boys are trained and brought up in such a way that if you cry, you're not man enough. And this is typically what happens. And I can share with you a very good story where I have this one psychiatrist, a friend of mine, who has really high empathy for people with mental health condition. And one day, I asked him, I said, it's so amazing and extraordinary that you have such high empathy levels. What made you, how does that happen? And he said, you know what, Sister Riba, when he started becoming a psychiatrist, there was this one male patient that came to him and started crying and crying. And because he himself is a man, he then realized that if a man can come to him crying nonstop, then the pain is real. You know what I mean? So that was how his empathy levels became really high. And he really understood, without having lived the experience, that really a mental health condition is very, very painful. And really it is. And it's even more painful because people can't see it and people can't relate to it. People don't understand it. And so people, typically brush it off and say things like, snap out of it, be stronger and, pray more and things like that, which is, very, very sad because, mental illness is a real condition. And, the pain
is that
real.
true with boys, like little younger boys as well? Or do you find that more in adults? No, I mean that toughening up attitude, kind of not wanting to, as men. Yeah.
I think it depends on the upbringing itself. Because if you are being, if you're brought up in that family, in that kind of environment from small, it kind of sits with you,
Watching.
and yeah, and then you grow up, feeling that way, and then when you have a son, you tell your son the same thing. So it becomes this vicious loop, really, which is very, very unfortunate. And I see that a lot in our culture, and even in the Islamic culture as well, which is very sad, really.
So I'm just wondering, and that is with young people like 10, 15-year-olds, that
Yeah.
age group, is it also the stigma that stops them, or do they not even know?
Okay, so some of the, because we have a lot of adolescent and teens that come to our center, and typically they tell us that even when they reach out to their parents don't believe them. So this is why that stigma part is very important. So imagine reaching out to your parent, probably contemplating for the past week, probably having sleepless nights, finally having that courage to reach out to your parents, and then your parents tell you, look, you're just making this up, or you're just seeking attention.
Making an excuse,
Making an excuse for not wanting to go to school, for example. Because I have a lot of parents that come to me and tell me, my kid's really lazy, Sister Anita, he doesn't want to go to school, things like that. Kids are not lazy. There must be a reason to it.
Yeah. So if we are targeting, we say we're gonna do stigma, focus on that, then we need to target adults really in that, not kids.
Oh yeah, we have to target both actually concurrently, adults and kids both. Because if kids don't have the stigma, they reach out, but parents have stigma, then it doesn't work, right? And if kids don't reach out and parents don't have a stigma, then it doesn't work out as well, because the kids are not going to reach out for the help, right? So what is important is having that knowledge. So if kids have knowledge, they can reach out. If parents have the knowledge, they can see the symptoms if their child has it. So I think at the end of the day, normalizing this discussion is so important. Yeah.
So just understanding what is mental illness, not being afraid of that, that's all part of addressing the stigma, you say.
Yes, and also understanding that anyone can get mental illness. This is so important, because sometimes people tell me like, oh, he's so religious, why does he have mental illness? He comes from a good family. Why does he have mental illness? He's rich. Why does he have mental illness? He's a doctor. Why does he have mental illness? So this is the common misconceptions that people have.
You have no reason to be sad. Why are you sad?
Exactly. That's also the other thing.
Because some of the questions were like, what triggers it? But it could be it doesn't mean that. Not necessarily always that you went through some abuse. It could be something in...
It could be personality. It could be, you're a perfectionist, for example, or you're a worrier, for example, right? You worry about a lot of things. So, and it could also be threshold, me and you, for example, we could be going through the same thing, but because my threshold is probably smaller, I get mental illness. But because your threshold is bigger, then you don't get it. So it really depends. Yeah.
Okay, I'll end with my questions too. I mean, this is such an interesting topic, and we know so little about it, and it affects us all so deeply.
Oh yeah. It does.
So, I mean, this can be a very, very long conversation. Jazakallah khair. We all really appreciate it, right, guys? I want to say Jazakallah khair to Sister Anita for being here, giving you her time.
Jazakallah khair, Auntie Anita.
Jazakallah khair.
Thank you. Thank you.
We all learned a lot.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure. Very humbled to be here. Thank you very much, kids. I hope all the best. I hope that you guys will be your own hero one day. And do your bit.
Let you know what they do. I'll keep you updated, inshallah.
Okay, yes.
The fruits of your investment of your time here.
All right. All the best, kids. Thank you. Thank you so much.